So I'm Ronzio. I'm the technical director of the digital experience here at Pure Storage, and I have with me Stan Yudzinski too. We'll move forward. The standard disclaimer stuff. So last time on Storage Field Day, I'm going to actually show you the actual demo. This is actually the Pure One interface. So the first thing that we showed a lot of last time was our service catalog. So inside our service catalog, the primary reason for this initially was that we were shifting to more of a subscription model. So it was the Pure as a Service is the name of that subscription model. And in here, you could go in and choose block services or unified fast file and object services from our FlashBlade and buy them as a service. So for instance, you could click on one of these. You could click on use cases and see, what is this service actually good for? What would be some of the typical use cases that people would use? We were exposing MSRP pricing so a customer could see price per terabyte and kind of get an idea of what that looks like. And then they could simply just request that service. They could adjust the term. They could select a workload, even tie it into. We're tying it into logistics so we know when we can actually execute that order and get it on site for a customer and all of that. So this was very complementary to the customers that were moving more towards as a service. And we have a ton of customers that are very interested in that for various reasons. But one thing we didn't have at that time is, well, what if you wanted to do self-service and you were still buying things traditionally? You were still a CapEx customer. We didn't have that. So you'd have to still do that. You'd have to actually talk to a human being to do that, right? So some people don't want to talk to a human being, right? But I'm kind of joking on that. But you can click on FlashArray or FlashBlade now, and you can actually go in and purchase an array as a service. So just a traditional purchase. And we've made that, again, all of the things are very much the same. You click on request quote. They actually select the model that they need, the capacity that they need, and simply a little brief description of what it is they're going to use it for and their email address, and then accept the user agreement. Now, a lot of our customers that have been using the tools for a while feel more comfortable with things like the planner. So if you go to advanced options, which we did show last time, that will take you to the workload planner because maybe what they're trying to purchase is a little bit more sophisticated. This is relatively new, so we don't have a ton of metrics on the utilization of this quite yet. But I expect that that we'll start to see a lot of uptick on this type of a thing pretty soon.
Around this, the business model behind it, because so where is the reseller here, your partner? I mean, most of your sales are also through partners. So I miss the role of the partner here.
So there's actually a component that we call on the back end the partner quote experience, and that was something that we released. There's not actually anything to really show other than we basically built in the back end so that when they click on request quote, it actually informs the partner of record and the Pure sales team. So in no part of this is the partner taken out of the equation. The partner is just as much involved in someone doing it this way as they would be if it was just a traditional, field sales activity. That's a really good question. And that was something that we kind of lagged in getting this out because the partner quote experience part wasn't built yet. So we actually waited till that was fully integrated. And at the point where someone clicks on request quote, that's when the messages go out to both the partner and the Pure Storage sales team. And just know at that point, it's still very much a traditional sale at that point. It's just they're initiating the process through the portal versus, maybe calling their sales rep or emailing their sales rep. Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. Okay, so that covers sort of the CapEx purchasing versus Pure as a Service purchasing. The other thing that we kind of went through last time was this idea that you can go into our planning tool and you can simulate new workloads and things like that. Now I'm not going to go through that again, but things that commonly happen in our user base is people will go in and simulate workloads, or they'll go in and see trends of where their actual appliance is as far as utilization, and then they may drive themselves toward a purchase, which can be done through Pure One. But one of the things that we just added just recently is in the service catalog itself, you actually see proactive recommendations. So now instead of the customer having to go through, what we noticed is our Pure One user base that had been with us for a while, they were very comfortable with Planner. They would go through Planner and they would see, oh my gosh, in the next 90 days, my utilization is going to exceed a certain amount. So I should maybe consider upgrading the system. But then newer customers going online may not be as familiar with the Planner. So we kind of had some back end discussions and said, if we already know what the customer needs to do, then why wouldn't we at least start to just give them those recommendations live versus them having to go through Planner to get to that point? So now this is a test environment, so some of these do look a little bit odd, but basically what this show is showing you is the proactive recommendations looks out the next 90 days, and it tries to look for higher utilization in the next 90 days. And if it notices a trend in the direction of they're going to need more capacity or potentially controller upgrades, we would inform them on this screen. Now, there's two ways to get to this. One would be this little, you could be anywhere in the interface and just click on this recommendation. It's going to take you here. The other way you could get to it is from the main splash screen, which will show you new features. But we're already in here, so I can click on this. So it shows me there's two recommendations. Now, keep in mind, this does look a little goofy because we had added and removed some data from the test environment. So just kind of keep that in mind. But what it'll say here is one of the recommendations is on this particular appliance. It's suggesting that we expand the capacity from 37 terabytes to 59 terabytes. And if we click on that, it actually shows me how this is actually laid out. Is anything in black is pre-existing, anything in green is what it added. So you'll see it shows you sort of this before and after. Now, a customer can simply just request a quote on this if they agree to it. But a lot of our customers are going to want to know more. They're going to, all right, well, that's great that you made that recommendation, but help me understand why you made that recommendation. So they can click on show chart, and this is exactly pulled from Planner. So a customer could have gotten to this destination through going to Planner, but we're sort of circumventing all that and just showing it to them because we've done the data on the back end, or we've done the analysis on the back end rather. And so they can see what we're proposing. Now, what we have noticed since we launched this in that select 100 user base is that some customers were unaware that even though we send alerts out, so just so you know that when we make this recommendation, they are getting an email as well. So not only, and the email will actually directly link them back to this. So we are sending alerts, but emails are kind of clogged up these days. So if they miss the email and they log into the interface and find it this other way, what's great here is a lot of times what we're noticing in that 100 that we've kind of beta tested this with is a lot of them were unaware that they were so close to meeting some capacity or performance requirement, but they had other projects. So not only do they need this, but maybe they actually need a bit more. And if that's the case, they can use the advanced options. They can go to simulate hardware, and that brings them back to Planner. And if they know there's additional workloads they need to add to it, they can do that at that point and then request a quote for that. So
can it send it to my phone as well as email? So like we get all the spam notices?
Actually, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it actually does send it to the phone as well. It probably does. It probably sends it to the Pure One app, but I don't know if it sends it as a text message.
Because upgrading the system or adding space is a solution maybe, but let's consider that maybe a customer has more appliance, can be also a solution, not in this case, moving some workload to one appliance to another or rebalance in some way across what you have. Are you also considering this case?
Some of that is not built into this yet. So there's actually, in the planning tool, you can, let's say the customer has a more sophisticated layout, they're bringing on additional applications. What we haven't built into this yet is there's actually a proactive or a recommended placements tool that we have where you show it the new workload and it will tell you what the best placement is for it. That hasn't actually been sort of added or integrated into this quite yet. That's actually a separate tool. So I think maybe in the future we might decide to do that. But for right now, this is what you see is kind of what you get at the moment. But we do plan to sort of make enhancements on this. It's pretty much a brand new thing. We just implemented it. So like I said, it's not fully live yet.
Yeah, so that was what I was going to mention, right? This is a tech preview. Right? So this is the initial thing. And because it is exactly what you mentioned, I forgot who said that, but it's emails, it's notifications, it's alerts, right? We don't want to be spamming people. And so we want to start with high confidence use cases where, hey, we can very clearly tell that this array is going to run out of capacity. So first, we're going to tell you that this array is potentially going to run out of capacity. And then we're going to give you a little bit more information and say, hey, here's how much capacity you need to add in order to get it into a pretty good state. And so that's a high confidence recommendation. We are working with a number of customers in limited beta in order to make sure that the amount of notifications that we send out are a good amount, not spamming anybody and all that kind of stuff. And as we build out the features, you can imagine a lot of the rest of the tools in the planner, we're going to look to potentially provide these proactive recommendations around those other use cases. But we do have, like Ralph said, regular recommendations. So you can go into the planner and you can choose a couple workloads and then say, hey, where would you recommend that we place it? And so you could do that in a kind of pull method rather than a push method. So as these things evolve, we're going to add more capabilities into the push method. And then in terms of actually sending out notifications to the phone, I don't think we're doing that quite yet, but it is something we eventually want to do. Not necessarily, again, not to spam people. You can always control what notifications you get on the iPhone itself. But a lot of what we're doing in the future is focused around notifications, alerting, and making sure that our customers can get the right information when they need to. Because personally, I think the next generation of storage advancements is going to be less about what can you do with the storage, but more about what can the storage help you do. And so you'll see a lot of that here today.
No, exactly. We're also tracking something I didn't mention is we're also tracking when they don't choose to accept the recommendation to try to see, where there might be some margin of error there. So when this is implemented in full production, we're also going to track when the customer doesn't decide to click on the recommendation, maybe why. So there's a lot of data that goes behind this, and a lot of it is, I can't even remember how many petabytes a year we're collecting of data to try to make all these tools work efficiently. It's a pretty big number. But yeah, so there's a lot of data that backs these recommendations. So that kind of covers the only thing that was different, that did change from last time that we spoke. Last time we met, safe mode was a hot button. And for those that don't know, safe mode is this immutable snapshot capability that we have in the system, which allows us to turn that on a specific appliance. And then if for some reason the customer was the victim of a ransomware attack, we don't prevent the attack, but we give you a remediation step that's an immutable snapshot that can't be affected. But what we noticed is we were like, well, a lot of people are interested in this, but this is also an opportunity for us to change the safe mode assessment to an overall data protection assessment. So this is obviously our lab environment. So there's a lot that we're not doing here, but we didn't have this when we first last met. We didn't have this honeycomb view. The honeycomb view we did, I think, but it was just a picture. It wasn't actively working yet. So basically what you see here is every one of these is basically an appliance within the environment. And the goal here was to say, what are all the things that Pure Storage does from a data protection standpoint? You have safe mode now to help with ransomware remediation. You have snapshots, you have cloning, you have disaster recovery. And a lot of customers are utilizing those features, but also customer growth is rapid, and sometimes they forget to turn certain things on, and maybe they don't actually know that. So this was a way to provide them a Pure Storage only right now risk assessment to see how protected is your storage system. So if you were to say click on an object on the right hand side, it's going to pop up and tell you information about is safe mode enabled or not. And if it isn't, then you can request it to be enabled. Are they protecting their file systems with snapshots and remote replication? In this case, there's zero. They're not doing it at all. So that's why it would show up as red. And so there's also, to put a build on it, we give them an overall fleet view of how well are you doing with snapshots and how well are you doing with replication. In the lab, we're not doing very well. We only are 2% is being replicated to a remote environment. And you can also start to see, are there systems that, even though we're recommending safe mode to be enabled, maybe it's not up to the right code release. So can we actually just help them initiate the code upgrade? And you're going to learn more about this later because Pure One Edge Services is allowing us to do self-service upgrades. So Right now, you can go in and look at the software lifecycle, and you can run checks to make sure that your system is applicable to apply a new code release. But we can't do the code release, and that's what Stan's going to get into a lot of this really neat new stuff, where we start to get into more active management with Pure One, where you can actually do some of this stuff. So I think understanding the groundwork will be great when Stan gets to that part, and then we'll show it to you after in a live demo. So I'll just give you the basics, because this gets a lot better when we start talking about Purity Edge services. But basically, a customer can choose an array. It could be a FlashBlade, it could be a flash array, and they can basically check the upgrade readiness of that device. So this was something where customers that have really large fleets, like we have customers that have lots of our systems now, lots of our appliances. And so even though a customer with, less than 10 appliances, that's a pretty easy thing to just handle by themselves. If you have a fleet and you need to do a massive upgrade, how can we check to make sure that those systems are ready for those upgrades? Now, this was all sort of a bit manual before. We would run pre-flight checks working with our support center in Lehigh, Utah. And there was a lot of work involved on the back end. We've basically taken all of that and put that into Pure One so that a customer could simply say, where's their source and where's their target, start the check, and then the check will give me back any issues that might be there that might prevent me from doing my upgrade. This is going to get a lot cooler after Stan talks about some of the things we're doing. So just keep in mind that as of right now, we can sort of tell you what your issues are. Like I can view results and it'll tell me, hey, there's a host path issue, so maybe I shouldn't do this upgrade because they're not all HA connected. But if in the event that everything was okay and ready to go, you still had to open up a case with support. So that's going to change because we're fully automating that process. But I don't want to jump ahead because Stan's going to go through a lot of the groundwork that it took for us to get to that spot.
So Ralph, just a quick question on fleet management. You mentioned you've got customers who have a lot of appliances. Yeah. How many is a lot? Because I imagine there's not many customers who'd have 145 appliances.
I mean, there's actually quite a few customers that have, but that 50 plus, appliance list. So, yeah, we've gotten into a lot of big enterprise organizations over the last couple of years, and that has really, the couple of systems or the 5 or less systems, that list is really the list of the north of 50 plus or north of 20 plus has gotten a lot larger than before. So those are the ones that really need tools like this. I had been out of the field for some time. I started at Pure Storage about 7 years ago selling in the field, and I was shocked at how much we've grown as far as the sheer amount of appliances that some of these larger customers have. I don't think I'm allowed to say the names of those customers, but there are definitely some larger deployments that can see a lot of value in doing something and looking at it from a fleet-wide perspective.
I think the only thing I'd add is I know we just had our earnings, and so there were some customers talked about on that. But I think what Ralph said is we can't really talk about numbers and specifics around exactly how many customers, but we do have a large number of enterprise customers that are always constantly growing. I know the most recent one that is public is Meta, and how Meta is using our Meta, which is going to get confusing. Both of us have a company versus product named Meta, but yeah, lots of customers that are growing pretty rapidly.
So just to show you an example really quick. So this is an array that passed the checks. So just keep this in mind, take a little mental snapshot of this, because this is saying it's passed. So there really isn't much more I can do here other than schedule time with support to actually start the upgrade. But once we go through Stan's section, you're going to see that we're actually making it so you can do this whole activity self-service, which is really awesome. And yeah, that's going to be a theme throughout. You're going to see more and more and more customers can go in and do a lot of these things themselves. And that's a lot of that has to do with us moving to more of a as a service model. And some of it's just the evolution of what we do. We've kind of baby stepped our customer base into all the automation stuff, because I think in storage in general, I've only done storage my whole career, and it always seemed like automating anything storage related 10 years ago was scary. And so when we came, in the market and we showed how easy things were, it took a while to get that comfort level We've probably could have done this a while ago, a couple of years ago, but we've been really trying to baby step things in. And some customers have been doing this in more of like a limited availability or even like an alpha or beta stages. But now it's time to finally, start loosening the reins on some of this stuff. So I